This is episode 29 of season 2 of my vlog to try and squat double body weight in my 40s. So not many vlogs left of this season. April the next one, so season 3. Last week, what a bad week that was. I had a bit of an emotional rant last week. I won't be doing that again. I won't be recording a podcast after a bad session. I'll give it at least a day before I record that one. But it's nice to know people cared. So I had a few people phone me up and say, was I okay? Good friend Gary offered me a hug. I was obviously must have been emotionally distraught after this one. But to counterbalance that one, I'm going to go completely the other way this week. And this week is all about data. And no emotion will be spared in this episode. It's going to be purely data based. So, how have I been getting on? Compared to this time last week when I wasn't getting on, I was having some kind of meltdown. Some lovely data. First bit of data. So the red horizontal line here is representing 0.65 meters per second. That's the average I'm looking for from each set. So because I decided to have a bit of a wobble and record it, put it out there and wait rather than waiting, the message last week would have been very different to what it should have been, because on the Friday, which was 48 hours after the last episode, I actually did incredibly well. I jumped up to 0.66 meters per second for the set of 20 at 95 kilos, and therefore exceeded the threshold. So more than happy with that. And if I'd have just waited and told you that, it'd all been very different, but I didn't. But there you go. So real bit of progress there. The other bit of good news was then I was able to move up to 100 kilos. The last time I moved up from 90 to 95, I had a drop off, so the 0.48 kind of range, as you can see there. If I can just kind of hover the mouse, two low points, maybe kind of to the right and middle of that graph in the 0.4s. Where this week, when I moved up to 100, I only dropped into the 0.5, 0.55, that kind of range. So that was really pleasing, because you don't want to be that far away from where the threshold is you want to get to. Obviously, the lower you drop, the longer it's going to take you to get to that threshold value. And the other pleasing thing about that second score, 0.55, was it was done after a load velocity test. So I'd already done some squats first, so there's reason to believe that might be slightly better, not a massive amount better, but slightly better than I did there. So I'm really comfortable that progress is being made. So that's the velocity side of things. As I mentioned a week or two ago, velocity can be a little bit hard to track progress on, because you will kind of wave up and down as you increase loads. To see kind of a better indication of overall progress. Although power isn't the thing I'm measuring myself against, it's effectively how much weight can I move. Producing power is always a kind of a bit of a nice kind of sideline to have, because it basically is velocity times force. So if I'm producing more force and faster, that will produce more power. And it's also independent, or not necessarily independent of, but it's less influenced by kind of the up and down of weights, because you can, as you if you go up the weight, I can't get the words out today. As you go up the weight, it kind of compensates for the drop in velocity, so you're not having as big a impact. So what we can see here is that, yes, there's still that kind of wave-like effect, but you can see the general trend line is going up and up and up, which is really positive for me. So it means I've produced progressively more power as the training block has gone on, which means I've gotten better. And that's the thing to focus on, getting better. So the golden question is, have I gotten closer to achieving a double body weight squat? Now, I haven't done anything like a measurement of my maximum squat strength for such a long time, because I had all sorts of like hip and pain issues, detraining. So there's no point, like I think I mentioned this many times over now, that at Christmas time by the time I got to Christmas, I'd basically done no training for like 6 weeks. So completely detrained again. Well, not completely, but quite substantially detrained. So there's no point checking how far away I was from it, because that would have only been more demotivated than I already was, because it would have only told me that I'd gotten weaker, not stronger. But I promised myself, when I got to 100 kilos, that was the time to do another load velocity test, because I think that would give me a reasonable indication of where I was. So this is what that looks like. So what I use at the minute I'm using a 4-point system. So this time I use 60 kilos, 80 kilos, 100 kilos and 120 kilos. I think the next time I do this I might have to change that. Maybe up each load by 10 kilos. But we'll see how that goes. And then I produce a linear regression equation to predict different volumes at different intensities. So what I do is load at 0, which is entirely theoretical. Obviously you can't move at 0 meters per second, you're just stood still, and I could hold probably more than 180 kilos stood still. It'd be very uncomfortable, but I probably could do that. But it's not a squat, so that doesn't really matter. But it's a hypothetical measurement, and it's less variable than the actual measurement I'm going to use, which was load at 0.25 meters per second. And I've anticipated that is the velocity that I'll probably be able to max out at. Now I don't know that for definite. It might be 0.2, it might be 0.21. So that number might not be a true representation of what my actual 1RM is. But what I've done is I've kind of used a little bit of knowledge of the research I've done in velocity-based testing. And 0.25 is a reasonable guess to say that's where somebody might max out. Again, I have seen people go down as low as 0.19 for a squat, but that's incredibly slow. But if I keep a nice kind of consistency to that 0.25 meter per second, that predicted me at 152. I currently weigh around about 95 kilos, so that kind of gives me a target of around about 190. Personally, I think I'm going to try to go for about 200, because it's this nice round number, isn't it? Why would you not? Why would you get close to 200 and not go for 200? That means if I don't quite meet the 200 goal, but I still get close to double body weight, I might still achieve the goal. But 200 is a nice round number. You can't not go for it, can you? So from the actual 95 kilos times 2, which would be 190, I'm a 38 kilos off. That's a lot of weight to add on to a squat. But I'm more convinced than I've ever been that I've got that capacity to have a good go at that now. I've since I've been doing this kind of conversation to camera, I've never had three and a half months of consistency, of going to the gym 3 times a week. Don't get me wrong, a couple of times I've been and I've done fucking nothing, but I've been there, whereas other times other things have got in the way and I've not been able to get there and go. So that's kind of where I am now. I feel quite comfortable with that. So currently I'm about 1.6 body weight, not 2. So another 0.4 body weights to go. So the next bit, I found this really interesting, and it tells you just how wonderful the brain and body is in terms of how it manages itself. So in the load velocity test, I did 2 reps per load, so 2 reps at 60, 2 reps at 80, 2 reps at 100, and 2 reps at 120. So 8 reps in total, so not a massive amount of volume. The 2 reps I did at 100 kilos, knowing that I only had to do 2, and it was about kind of max velocity. I did 0.72, I think 0.76, I think something like that. Now, when I went to do the squat set at 100 kilos, bear in mind that if my target is, if I'm 1RM is hypothetically 150, 100 kilos is 66% of body weight, so of 1RM, sorry, so it's like, this is a light load. When I came to do that, yes, I'd done 8 reps, but 8 reps weren't emptying the tank by any stretch. I didn't feel fatigue, my legs didn't feel tired, anything like that. The best rep I could do was like 0.63, I think it was. And every single time I do a squat, because I'm measuring velocity, I intend to move as fast as I possibly can. I know I'm conscious of that. I'm trying to do that. But I couldn't get anywhere close to the 0.7 plus that I did in the test. So why was that? And I think it can explain kind of the body's way of pacing itself, reserving resources for the task ahead. So my brain implicitly knows that I've got to get 20 out, and if I chuck out massive amounts of force to do 0.7, which is really emptying the tank in terms of using those high power output fast twitch fibers, I would have too much fatigue and therefore risk not doing all 20 reps. I never did that consciously. That wasn't an intention of mine to do that. But that's kind of how I can rationalise this. I don't think it was fatigue. I certainly didn't feel fatigue, and I wouldn't have anticipated effectively those 8 repetitions with lots of rest in between, because I knew it was a test, so plenty of rest in between repetitions. I said I didn't feel any fatigue whatsoever, and it was only 8 reps. So if I'd have seen a massive kind of 0.69, 0.7, and then it fell off a cliff, I can say, yeah, well, basically I added 2 reps to the set or 8 reps to the set, and therefore it fell off a cliff. I didn't see that. I couldn't access the same speed at the beginning of the set as I'd just done. So this is actually a really important thing where you're kind of understanding how set prescription works. Like if you're going to prescribe like high rep sets, you're implicitly kind of telling your body not to produce lots and lots of power, because it's going to manage that across the set. Whereas if you're producing sets of like single, doubles, triples, and you do lots of sets, you're potentially encouraging the body to produce more power output, more force output. So that's something that hopefully people might take from this. It's something I kind of maybe knew this was a bit of a theoretical exercise, but I never seen quite so starkly produced in numbers. So then I went in to look at my power output across that low velocity set, because I kind of, like I said, I didn't do any data last week, and I probably had a bit of overreaction to that. So this in itself doesn't produce a lot of information on its own, one graph. So what I'll do next time I do this low velocity test, I'll do that. So basically my peak power output from a squat point of view came around about 95 to 98 kilos for just doing 2 reps, that is. And that was based off the best rep from each of those paired exercises. So hopefully what I'll see in future is that graph going up and to the right. So peak power output is more, and it's produced at higher loads. As I get stronger, I can access more force, produce that force more quickly at higher loads. So that's kind of a bit of a teaser for later. More data? Yeah, how much more data can anybody have? It's incredible. 12 minutes in, I need to shut up talking soon. Loads in the weightlifting exercises, they are trying to kind of creep their way up a bit now. As you can see there on the right hand side of that graph, we were quite depressed, and they're now starting to creep up. So as squats numbers going up, I was saying that it wasn't having any effect at all. They seem to be kind of catching up a little bit now. But now I think they're a little bit more sensitive to fatigue than squats are. So if I'm a little bit tired, that comes through in these high velocity movements in the clean, the high velocity and technical movements of the clean and the snatch. Whereas in the slower, slightly less technical exercise like the squat, I don't think fatigue has much of an influence. So that's where we are with that. But on the way up, hopefully it'll continue to rise. Yeah, so that's me for today. That is me waffling on about data to my heart's content. So, in short, I shouldn't have moaned last week. Things are going well. Things are continuing to go well. My next objective is to hit an average of 0.6 meters per second for 20 reps on the squat at 100 kilos, and then I'm going to drop down to 14s. Adam Scott has been kind of advocating this for a week or two now. So I'll drop to 14s, and I'll probably go to miss out 105, go to 110 for 14s because of the decrease in reps, and start to build towards that more traditional form of higher intensity, low repetition strength training from then on in. So onwards and upwards. I'll see you all next week.